This is an okay lens. It's not bad, and it certainly isn't great. I've seen a fair bit of love for this lens online, and I've found it a little bit puzzling. And about a year ago, I did a trip to Europe for a couple of months in the winter where I had the 16mm f1.4. And oftentimes I wish that I had a little bit more versatility and the ability to zoom out a bit further, especially while doing video, to get a little bit more in the scene and to escape some of the crop factors. Right after the trip, I was going to go the Viltrox 13mm f1.4 because I saw that lens was pretty amazing. Just a slightly wider version of the Sigma that I already had with an aperture ring, which is pretty awesome. But then I saw and heard about this lens and thought I'd give it a shot. It's got a bit of extra versatility. I don't think I necessarily needed the f1.4. It feels a little bit overkill. And yeah, so I decided to pick this bad boy up, went up to one on Facebook Marketplace, got it for about 600 Australian dollars. I just get into the thick of this lens. I'm gonna start with the negatives because oftentimes when we're looking at gear, we look past the negatives because of our gear acquisition syndrome. It happens to all of us and it's hard to escape. First, it is pretty big. Some people say it's not that big, and while they are sort of right, it's not enormous. This is an ultra wide to normal lens in the vein of, your standard 16 to 35mm on full frame. I'm going to show an image on the screen of a top-down view comparing this to the Zeiss Sony mount lens, the 16 to 35 f4, and you can see that they are very similar in size and weight, which frustrates me a lot because the whole point of APS-C is that it can make smaller lenses that do basically the exact same thing, and they should be cheaper, but when you compare the prices for those two, they are very similar as well. If I throw a few more options into the ring, you can see that there's the Sony 10 to 20 f4 and the Sigma 10 to 18 2.8. Both would be compelling options. The 10 to 20 on the Sony is a power zoom, but it's also an E-mount lens, so yeah, Fuji can't use that, just like you can't use this one on a Sony. With all these numbers on the screen, it certainly makes me wonder why the 10 to 24 gives us such unremarkable performance and no remarkable qualities about it besides having image stabilization, which isn't really that important for many bodies. Like the X-T4 and above, and basically every new Fuji body besides the XM5 has IBIS. So making the lens stabilized isn't really a necessity anymore. If you just do some numbers and some really basic maths, you can see that in every way that this is inferior size-wise to the other lenses. The Sony is 80% of the length and 43% of the weight, and the Sigma is 74% of the length and 63% of the weight, so just way lighter and easier to carry around on a day-to-day basis. I had hoped that this would be a lens that I would take with me on holidays and just be able to have it around my neck all day, and that's not really the best use case for it. It does get a little bit weighty and unwieldy. Sorry, you'll have to excuse the hat and sunglasses. It is 35 degrees today out, basically summer in Australia. Pretty hot. Sorry, mate. There you go. All right, the second point, maybe one of the biggest, is it's a little soft. Lens is a little bit soft. I was surprised how much I noticed this when reviewing the photos. I'm not always looking for critical sharpness. If it's sharp enough, then that's good enough for me. But if I notice it without, deep diving and pixel peeping, then that's more of an issue. I would probably say it's sharp enough, certainly in the center, but as soon as you get to those edges of the frame, it becomes a little bit kind of like a smudge painting in a really noticeable way, and didn't really like that. And I noticed that it was kind of across the zoom range. It wasn't just the ultra wide, so even when you go to 35, you get some of those issues. In the other terms of image quality, one of the massive things I noticed was a huge issue with lens flaring. I'm gonna show a photo where it's probably the best case of lens flaring that you'll get. You just get some artifacting across the screen, a little bit of loss of contrast in some spots, but there was one instance where I was away for the weekend with the boys. Took a photo, it was pretty heavily backlit. We were by far taking up most of the frame. The sun was probably up in the top left corner. But the flaring caused it to just lose contrast and a haziness across the whole image, and it was probably f5.6 at 1/2000th of a second. It was a really bright day. 3, the aperture ring is kind of weird. It's one of the older Fuji lenses where they had the aperture rings where they weren't very resistant. They're quite smooth and easy to turn. You can basically knock this and turn it. And it's also unmarked, so it does cause you to rely on looking at your screen a lot and judging based off of that, especially when the turning is so smooth. It is easy to overcorrect. If you want to go to 4 to 5.6, you might end up at 7.1 accidentally. So I'd keep that in mind. Now the next one, it's good and bad, but it's not really the lens's fault, necessarily speaking. So when I had that 16mm f1.4, 24mm full frame equivalent, I noticed that sometimes while doing handheld video, I would get a bit of warbling in the corners. And that's not something that's really fixable in post at all, unless you crop in. So very frustrating. I had seen this lens and saw it had IBIS and looked up to see whether that might fix the warbling. I found inconclusive evidence, and then when I got it myself, I pretty quickly realized that it still has it, and it's more pronounced at those very wide focal lengths as you'd expect. So unfortunately, if you were looking to use this for handheld video, then you're kind of shit out of luck to a degree, because you're going to get those very noticeable warbling in the corners. It's quite distracting and you can't get rid of it in post. The other really annoying thing is it's only weather sealed if you buy the weather resistant version, which is a lot more expensive. As I said, I bought this on Marketplace for 600 Australian dollars. I think at the time when I was looking, I would have had to pay another 300 to 400 easily for the weather resistant version. And from what I saw online, that is the only difference. And it's really hard to justify that for this lens. Like, this was my first foray into ultra wide, so I imagine a lot of people might be in a similar situation, and paying that extra premium for just a bit of weather sealing is outlandish, and for it not to be on the lens in the first place is really frustrating, because it's targeted as, you know, it's an ultra wide lens, often used indoors for architectural purposes, but also for landscapes. And what a surprise, landscapes have inclement weather and you might get a bit of rain on you. So that's why I'd say the 16mm 1.4 has another boon. It's not strictly rated as weather resistant, but it has some sealing, and I used that in the snow and the rain and had no issues. So full year later, it still works perfectly. No issues there. Now we can just jump into the pros. This is still a pretty solid lens, so I don't want to make it seem like it's terrible or anything. It is very versatile. So if you're going away and you want to take one lens and you want to take food photos, you want to take landscape photos, you want to take a little video, shoot people, the autofocus is pretty good. You're probably more limited by the body you're shooting it on than the autofocus motor speed on the lens. So yeah, it's also just not overwhelmingly big, and you're definitely going to get way better shots than the 0.5 lens on your phone. So the second pro, I think, is a massive one. There's no barrel extension, so when you zoom in and out, it doesn't get longer or shorter, which I find to be a massive advantage. I've had the Sony 18-105 power zoom, which annoyed the crap out of me, because anytime I turned the camera off, it would move the lens back to 18mm, and there was no way to change that from what I found out. So anytime I wanted to turn it on and I wanted to shoot at a more normal 40 or 50mm full frame equivalent, I would have to zoom in, and that annoyed the crap out of me. Similarly with other lenses, barrel extension makes it so if you then just leave it on your strap or put it back in a bag, you're probably going to move it back to the focal length where the barrel is not extended. So then when you do use it, you have to adjust it again. This, you don't have to worry. Put it in a bag, it comes out. You want to leave it at 24, you can leave it at 24 all day. It's perfect. Also, if you use a gimbal, it doesn't change anything there. Probably most people aren't using a gimbal, so whatever. It is stabilized, so if you have an X-T3 or earlier, or the new XM5, you don't need to worry about not having IBIS. That's pretty handy. Another pro, I don't have any exact measurements because I'm just using the lens. I felt like it focused fairly closely. You can see by photos and videos. Like, I got the lens pretty close to the subject and got some good enlargement, and you can have a good bit of fun with it. You can make people look like they're big alien heads, mess with your friends. Take a photo with one of them in the center and you put one of them up in the edges, and then you can just take the absolute piss all day with telling them how big their head is. It's great fun. Is this lens worth getting? I'm gonna say no. As I said, I bought this after my last trip where I wished I had it, and then recently I went on another trip. I didn't even take it. So if that doesn't say it all, I don't know what will. Ultimately, I knew what this lens would be able to give me in terms of quality, and I just valued having a smaller kit to bring with me, given the size of this and the issues that we've discussed. Now, should you get something else? Probably. I would highly recommend looking into the vast variety of options from Sigma, Tamron, Rokinon, other Fuji primes also. But before doing that, I'd really ask myself, why do I want this lens specifically? Do I want it for the super ultra wide? Do I want it for the intermediate? Do I want it for the long, which kind of makes no sense really? Do I want it for the overall versatility? Am I going to be using it for photo, video, hybrid? These are questions you need to ask yourself before you can decide on this or something else. Because if you can only tick a couple of those boxes, you can probably very easily solve it with a prime. And primes are a lot more limiting, but cause you to be a lot more creative, and that's what I've found. Me personally, I'd probably be fine going back to the Sigma 16mm 1.4 or the Viltrox 13mm to get that wide to pretty wide look, but with a way sharper image that I have a lot more fun using. I'll put up some images that I took with the Sigma 16 1.4, and based on what you've seen from the Fuji, you can compare and sort of deduct based on that. If you really do need that ultra wide and some flexibility, the Sigma 10 to 18 is probably better. It's also 2.8 and a lot smaller, so I'd say it's more versatile for exactly what you're looking for and better in low light. And I've only heard amazing things. I haven't touched that lens, so you can go to Petapixel or Christopher Frost, link those ones, to check those ones out. They do great stuff. Most of these issues have been with photos. If you're going to stick it on a tripod, then you're probably not going to have any of those issues, and you can still get that great flexibility with it. And I have found that when I've most enjoyed using this lens, it has been with video. So if you're in that category, then I would recommend this lens. And especially if you have, the X-T3 or the XM5 or X2, X-T2, that category of cameras without IBIS, be pretty helpful there. In terms of the other options, when you factor in the difference in price, there's ones that look far more compelling. Like the Sigma 10 to 18mm might not have the weather-resistant seal of approval like the Fuji does, but it's also probably $400 cheaper, faster, and really if I don't find myself needing the longer end of the range on this lens, I'm more likely to just pick up my 23mm f2 or a different lens. I'm not going to get any of the image quality issues on them. It's way smaller. I really picked this up for the wide nature, and just having the longer end is a bit pointless and just makes it probably unnecessarily big in my use case. What will I be doing? I'll be selling this lens. I don't really ever have the urge to use it. Dog peeing over there.